I'll just say good morning, everybody. We did get a start. We have some technical issues that looks like we have solved now. If there's anybody online that's right now online,
Not yet.
not yet. We just started and someone may join. But develop methods to communicate about Black Hills and electrical service issues. Identify and develop methods to communicate all potential Black Hills energy programs that are available to customers. And identify and develop methods to communicate all potential state and federal programs that the Colorado Energy Department available to local residents. Those are, I like those. I mean, that's I think something important. Black Hills, I know, has their own outreach program. But what I've seen as a city council member is the more ways you have to communicate to the public, the better, because not everybody gets to every site, every website to understand what's going on. I think that's pretty good. Develop means to communicate with residents with ongoing information about Black Hills Energy. And we've also got electric service issues, but we don't have a bullet for that. Is there a bullet? Should we have a bullet for that? Or if we do, what do you think it should be?
Say that again, John.
So one of the suggestions is we develop methods to communicate electrical service issues about Black Hills Energy. And so the question is, should we have a bullet on that? And if so, what should we say? Black Hills does have a site. I've used it myself, that if there's an outage, you can go on and see where it is and what the estimates of restarting and things like that. Did you have something in mind?
Let me just make a suggestion here right now. Why don't we make that a separate goal? And we would say develop methods to communicate to residents with ongoing information about electrical services issues, instead of making two of them in one.
Okay,
And that way we could, because basically people don't understand very much about how the electricity comes about. You could have that as some type of a campaign to educate people how things work a little bit.
Okay,
I mean, it opens up a little bit more possibility, but I think if you separated those couple things and made them separate goals,
okay,
and you don't have to have, at this point, we don't have to have every little bullet point underneath it, but it gives us the latitude that we're thinking along those lines. And if you have something that comes up.
now let me throw it back to you.
Okay.
Who wants to know and why?
Who wants to know? I think as one of the things that we're doing here, one of our objectives should be to educate the public.
Okay,
Whether they want to know about it or not, I think we need to have information available for them to
okay,
let them know.
okay, then I'm gonna also then say, turn it over and say, we need to work with Black Hills to get that message out better and not spend our money.
Well, I think that is definitely an opportunity there. I mean,
Maybe give them an idea, a better way of reaching the customers, at least here in Canyon City, because that's all we have influence on.
Is
So-
it almost an emergency services type situation where you've got an outage, or is it just like Spectrum, for instance? If they have an outage, they send you an email
Right.
and say, we have an outage, so you're not under the desk unplugging everything,
Well,
you know?
I think you
So-
guys
and then
do that
they-
too, don't you now?
Yeah, it's a little, I think it's probably not quite as quick as some would like. Mostly because those outages, when they occur, a tech goes out to this.
You have to find out.
And they have to
where,
find it and validate it, verify it before they allow that to go out.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a delay.
Well, and sometimes the outage is 20 seconds, and it has to have a time set on it. I would think that they know that it's gonna be an hour, or if it's a specific area that's gonna be out for a couple hours. But should be some way to be able to sit target that area that needs to be aware of these service issues.
So let me ask Kathy's question a different way. Who is the who and the how? You know, if we want to communicate to the public, that's the who, that would be us, this committee. But the question is how? How would we expect to do that? And with that, what I would envision is that we're suggesting things to the city to put on their website or something like that for the how part of it. So that although I agree that there does need to be a method to better communicate to residents about ongoing information, including these bullets here. But the how is gonna be what really drives what we do. And so what, you know, I'm not sure what our options are here, but that should be part of the discussion, as we're going over them.
That's why it was written that way.
Yeah, sure. Mhm.
I learned through what I did for 40 years. You want to be very careful of how you put things. Okay, Carol, you asked for a time. How long are you going to be out? So here's the crew out there and they have to call in another crew, and it takes 30 minutes longer than what they projected. And all of a sudden you have this individual, I'm not gonna say man or woman, individual
Homeowner.
homeowner. Well, you know what? You told me it was gonna be out for an hour. You were out for an hour and a half. I burnt my roast.
Well, you know, that's just people, but I think electrical service issues are a whole separate thing from what we're trying to do, as tell our residents the programs that they can avail themselves of for energy savings and stuff like that. So I think that's what we need to go back to that, yeah.
And I think it should maybe say electrical service topics.
Yeah.
Electrical service, what
And that's a
topics?
separate-
okay.
Because issues will automatically get some people
Yeah,
thinking
that's
about
too narrow.
one thing, and that's
Yeah.
not what I had
Yeah,
intended.
I got
And to kind of take maybe a bigger view on this first one. I think part of what we need to keep in mind too is what we need to communicate when and how often and how about what the city's doing and what the city is looking at in terms of, you know, why this committee even exists. So that would be something else under number one.
And I think that would be electrical service topics, just like if we separated them of the two, that could be something that we communicate to the public a little
Then
bit
maybe
more.
the phrase electric service might be confusing. Are we talking about specific service issues like outages, or are we talking about the general reason why the committee exists?
this is a ladder, I believe.
Yeah, so
Electric topics.
Sure, Steve.
Steve,
Here's a what, I don't know the who and the how part, but, an example over the last, during the last two winters, Storm Uri came through. Fort Collins notified all their customers in advance that it was going to be very cold and that they were encouraged to minimize their electricity usage because they felt, and their gas consumption, because they felt that rates would be higher, that it would push the cost of electricity. They estimated that they reduced what would have been normal consumption by up to 10%, I think it was. I'm not sure of that, but that's my recollection. By contrast, Black Hills only mentioned it at the very last minute in Storm Uri. And it did not get good coverage, and it cost the customer base 23 million bucks. That's a lot of money. That's more, I forget what that is, John, but that's close for those 4 days. That was close to what they pay for the year in gas. I mean, it was enormous, and we're going to pay for it for a couple of years, $2-3 bucks a month each. This last cold spell, they got the word out a little bit this time. a little bit sooner. You can see these cold snaps coming, and warning customers about it may save the community some money. So I don't know how you want to communicate it or who does it, but that isn't something to consider at some point. I don't know. And I don't know
Do
how.
we have the ability, does the city do a reverse 911?
The city does not.
It's the.
Is that correct?
Free-com, we have the ability to do it through free-com.
Yes.
Okay, because
Yeah.
we've done that, Excel did that way back when, and it's one of those to where you don't get a lot of people on line, or they don't get it in a text or something that way, but you get a phone number for those who still have a landline, or even for their phones. That might be something to consider use. And we're getting into tactics, but you're right, it does, I think, give warnings a little bit earlier, it helps.
With the lack of a daily newspaper, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, something to get the thing, which
Yeah.
I do, because I have to know who's dead. But it's like the shopper, that thing about be sure you save energy during this cold spell, and the shopper was out the week after. You know, it was over by the time it was in the shopper. So, you know, it's sad, and it's a fact of life that getting information out on a wide basis is a hard thing to do. So you have to do a little bit in each media, I guess.
And I think just the importance of the issue with electric power,
Mhm.
it impacts everybody.
Yeah,
It's not just an issue that the city has and you have 15, 20 people coming and screaming and yelling at you. That, you know, it impacts your entire community, everybody in the community. So I think it's a very important.
but again, I think that's a Black Hills job. What's our job as a city, as a committee, to let people know about programs and issues or topics, however you want to put it. And who's gonna do it? Is Emily gonna write something up? Is John gonna write something up to put in the paper, to get on the radio? I mean, just to put out in a Facebook post, to have a short text, say, go to city website for more information. Who's gonna do that?
And it just boils down to priorities. If this is the city's priority or not. I mean, a lot of things just boil down to that. We can suggest things, but if staff that, you know, if the city
Yeah.
doesn't feel that they have adequate resources or whatever, if that's not really a priority, you know, there's so much on the table, and if this is not something that they're wanting to take on, then, you know, we could.
And this last cold snap, from a social media standpoint, we were sharing information both from Fremont Emergency Management. We shared anything that Black Hills put out.
Yeah.
I think, you know, some of that is trying to push the messages that are out there that are being put out by others. It's not our electrical system, they are our citizens. We want to make sure that
Yeah.
they're aware of what's out there and what's coming from a weather standpoint. And a lot of that, you know, we were pushing heavily the stuff that was coming out from Fremont Emergency
That
Management.
emergency management is very interesting, you know, that was helpful, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Atlas Energy, I think they had,
Yeah,
I saw emails from them probably 2 days before I saw from Black Hills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, they were just regularly talking to customers. like-
Well, and Excel was doing it because we handle the sun stuff in Denver, so we
Oh, yeah.
got stuff on them too.
Mhm.
That's one issue of multitude that you can look at, but, you know, we could sit here and talk about this for hours.
Yeah,
And there's a whole lot more that you want to take a look at the bigger picture. Not saying that you're gonna be, because when you do planning, you have planning for the short term, the
Right.
intermediate term, and the longer term. So some of these things might not occur for several years, and if we're really giving everybody the adequate information, you really have to break it down like that.
mhm.
Not only that, the people have to look at it.
Well, yeah, You can't force.
You can,
You
you know,
can
it's like,
put, you can lead a horse to water, but you
that
can't
was
make it
just
drink.
what I was gonna say, and that's the trouble, is how many times, you know, you put this out on the website, but how many people actually even think about going to the
Yeah.
website? You know, I even have to remind myself sometimes, it's terrible. But yeah, so it's one of those is that you can only do so much, and you're still gonna get feedback from the community one way or another, so it's just, it's almost like CYA. It's kind of
Yeah.
like what you're doing is saying, well, we did this, this, and this. It's not our fault you didn't read the data.
Yeah, at some point, people have to be responsible for themselves.
That's right.
Check the weather and
Yeah, so
understand that, there's life going on out there.
things do
that are
happen.
gonna affect them.
Can we move on from
Please.
this?
Yeah. Thinking about, the, UCOG and the leap and the weatherization, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And we just, that is a topic that you could spend a little bit of time on
Yeah.
too, but I mean, it's something that we need to do because whatever happens, those programs are gonna be there.
Yeah.
And we just need to make sure that we're taking advantage and getting our residents the most that we can.
And I suppose you, as working with Loaves and Fishes, I'm sure that, do they give that information out
Yes.
to their people, and DHS does as well? What about churches here in town?
Well, and see, those are some things that we could expand upon as, today, what I was looking at is just big picture.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking at,
Yeah,
getting into the weeds.
Let me ask John a question. I'm assuming, and I realize that on the electric side, you don't do other than air conditioning and evaporatives and stuff, but I would assume you're dealing with all of the HVAC people that are out there, and you try to get them up to speed as much as you can as far as what rebates are available, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's the best way to get it, because you get somebody who wants insulation. You're gonna pull in the insulation company, and they're gonna say, oh, by the way, if you put another inch or two in, we can that'll pay for itself, and they do, I think you probably do.
Yeah,
When you make the assumption, you do education to them to try and get them to help promote their own product.
and there's some folks that are, I don't know if you call them preferred vendors. I can't remember what they call them, but they're
Yeah.
partners. So the example I use is if you remember the Unbridled story in the Kansas City Daily Record, if you didn't see it, but the folks that own that LLC and wanted to do the upgrade, it was, his words were, it was as simple as going to the website, contacting the vendor actually knew the program, did the installation, helped them with the rebate. So it's that kind of, partnership that we've leveraged to help promote those programs.
So what a couple of comments. I agree that it would be really great to have another way to communicate with residents, with users about, programs, rebates, all that kind of stuff. That would be a great objective. Okay. The how then involves really what I see the purpose of this exercise, which is that we as the committee really don't have the ability to do the how unless we want to create our own website. But that's begging the question, because the real question is, what we're a subsidiary, essentially, an offshoot of council that has the ability to make recommendations to council for actions that should be taken. Okay, as opposed to us trying to create our own website or something like that. Okay, and so it's important to have that filter as we're talking about this, because that's where I was going with the how question. Now, if we're going to, if we want to have a method of communication, what we need to do is make a recommendation to council that this is something that should be done. And if we want to recommend what our role should be in that, that's great. Okay, that would be great, but remember, this is all what we've been empowered by council to answer questions and make recommendations. And that's what the goal of our committee is, answer questions, make recommendations. And so we need to look at it through this lens. What exactly gets down to the kind of the how, in my view. And something else, I don't want to leave the topic of weather quite yet, because I heard something that you know, I have questions about. So if I want to save electricity, save money on my rates, I have a little switch outside my house. I just go flip the switch and I don't have electricity in my house. You know, and so how do you, if you're using less, obviously you're saving money. Okay, and is that the appropriate thing? The question is kind of it's a margin question, I think. That if you turn your electricity usage down, if you had a dial that you could turn it down during a cold snap, when Black Hills may be using more gas to create more heat for people, does that really save you money? Gas, Black Hills still has to buy the gas. You still have to pay the higher rates. You as a rate payer are gonna pay that, whether you use more or less electricity during that, you're gonna pay for it through an energy cost adjustment.
But the energy cost adjustment is based on the amount that you use.
Yeah, it's volumetric, so.
It's
Like per
So,
user.
yeah, so in other words, if you use the less electricity, your ECA is gonna be lower also,
Yeah,
because they go hand in hand.
Gotcha.
Because you're using less KWH. The KWH is what it's based on to determine the ECA.
Is it the past KWH or the current KWH?
It's what you used before. It's based strictly, it's a percentage, so it's
The
basically.
energy cost adjustment is adjusted every quarter, and it's
Yeah.
adjusted based on historical cost. And then you pay that for the following quarter,
But
and
it's
so.
it's a go forward cost.
Yes
Yes,
and no,
and so
yeah.
what you're really doing, they're trying to recoup what they've,
Sure.
we're trying to recoup what they had,
What's been.
essentially, yes, so.
Which is allowed, that's all.
Yeah, so whichever direction up or down that gas went, the energy cost adjustment will go up or down, but yours is still volumetric. So if I used 50 kWh, then I pay for that. If I spend 100, then there's a multiplier, it's a percentage.
But the point is that's applied to every consumer,
Yes,
and it's based on their next quarter's usage. Right? I mean,
so no,
that's-
we adjust the energy cost adjustment, so it's like it's a.
Excuse me, I didn't, that's not based on, so it's charged on the next quarter's usage.
No.
No.
It's
It's on the monthly bill.
monthly
You're
bill.
charged in the future, but it's
Okay.
based on the past.
Right, so but the point
Does that
is,
make
it's a
sense?
future, you're paying a future bill, something that hasn't been, you're paying the adjustment on future bill. Something you haven't used yet,
No, no,
but
no,
it's in the future.
no.
The cost is calculated with that.
Yeah, I mean,
calculation is
to get
done
honestly really
30
far
days.
into the weeds, it is a kind of a bucket right now, if you want to think of it like a bucket of dollars, it's a cost that's been allocated. They do look forward a little bit. And so what happens is they collect based on usage, there might be an over collection, so that then gets passed on in savings in the future, so that is constantly adjusted for
Right.
overages and underages, but the reality is it's you based on historical use
So
primarily.
when ECA is approved, I see that ECA on my next month's bill,
Correct.
Mhm.
and it's based on the higher, it can be based on the higher rates paid during the cold snap.
Yes,
The higher rates Black Hills pay
higher
for
dollar
gas.
for gas.
Right,
Right.
so, all right, that's my point. Is that even if you turn down during a cold snap, you're not necessarily saving that's not a direct savings. Except if you're avoiding.
It's a direct
It's
savings.
a direct savings. Every month it's a direct savings or a direct cost.
But the point is, you end up paying for the higher rate anyway, even if you reduced yours.
Yes and no. I mean, if everyone reduces their demand by 10%, let's just say the Fort Collins example. then the community, the electric system buys less gas. But at the margin, the rate for the gas,
Yeah.
they've got some that's locked in on a long-term contract and they're buying some at market rates. The community benefits probably by more than 10% in that particular case,
Yeah.
the community. You as a customer, your ECA is not gonna change radically. You know, it's the same rate. There are two things. There's rate and amount. The rate changes every quarter. The amount is adjusted based on how much kilowatt hours you use per month. So if you use 10% less, your ECA charge on your bill will be 10% less.
Yeah.
But your ECA,
That's next month. That's based on your next month's usage.
no, it's based on what you, if you use 250 kilowatt hours, you're gonna pay an ECA that is per kilowatt hour. It's like 3 cents, 4 cents, 5 cents, or 6
It's not
cents.
looking back, it's looking forward.
But the ECA was looking back.
The ECA looks back to determine the rate that you pay going forward. That's my
But
point.
what you're
John,
saying,
it's a little of both. It's a little of both.
Well, didn't I say that?
Yeah.
It's a little of both. The
the
adjustment,
thing is, though, the thing is, okay, the ECA is based on the past, and yes, you're gonna pay it going forward. But going forward, if you use less energy, you're gonna save on that. It's like, say, last year you used 200 kilowatt hours, and they raised the ECA, but this year you only use 150, and the ECA is the same. You're still gonna save money.
Because you didn't use as much.
You did not use as
Now,
much.
the ECA on your bill is based on your usage on top of whatever the ECA was
Right.
calculated.
And what may happen, and I'm just guessing, but say they don't recover all of what they spent over that next quarter, the ECA the following quarter is probably not gonna go down.
Yeah.
Because it's just gonna take them longer to recoup what they spent. But the thing is you as an individual saved money. And if everybody saved money, then we would, the ECA would continue on, but you'd still never pay back Black Hills in a sense. Theoretically, gets into economics, which is if you hold this still and you do this. So, I mean, it's one of those things, but basically it's still you yourself will save money if you use less.
Well, yeah,
I will send everyone on the committee a history of the ECA since 2012, quarterly. And plus the electric rate. Okay, I will send it to you all. So
Yeah,
you-
I'm having
maybe,
trouble sleeping.
then maybe you can get some specific questions tied to that.
Okay.
Well, conservation should not be a one event thing.
Right.
If you just being fiscally responsible, if the rates are going up, you can say, I can only spend $100 a month according to what I get in income. You better start turning the thermostat down, and the lights off when you leave the bathroom. I tell my husband.
And then that's when the utility person says the lights are the least of your.
Oh,
fucking
my.
worries. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just make a comment on what you had said, Jeff. The whole objective of what I'm doing here is not for this committee, it's recommendations
Yeah,
of the city.
right.
For the city.
I just want to make sure everybody realizes that that was my intention. That was my intention of trying to word things like I did, so that it would be for the city council to decide. Yes, this is something that maybe we want to pursue, or no, this is not something we want to pursue.
yes, and that's great, that's exactly.
Yeah, that's
hoping for.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that.
I have a stupid question because I never pay any attention. Does the city pay postage when they mail stuff out or are they
Sure.
exempt? Oh,
Not-
okay, we're not congressmen, is what you're saying.
We have a bulk mailing.
Well,
We
sure.
do, we have bulk mailing.
What is that nowadays? That used to be a really good price.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, it's a lot.
Oh, it's a lot less, yeah.
Yeah.
So I used to do that.
And for, utility billing, we actually have a service that runs it out. That's the majority of the.
That might,
You got water bills.
Yeah.
yeah, that might be, I don't know, people,
It sounds
would you
like-
have too much cross pollination if you were to include something, okay, here are the electric programs you can participate and put them in with the water bills? Or would that be too confusing for the average Joe Blow?
would it be possible to have a bi-yearly report the
Well,
city
like
puts out to its citizens?
stormwater. Yeah, like the stormwater.
Or like a stormwater report to where you don't have to constantly be trying to keep up, because we all know here, if we've lived here any length of time, they can tell us we're gonna have 6 inches of snow and we don't get anything,
Absolutely.
or vice versa. So maybe just a general thing where you put out, the city puts out quarterly, bi-yearly, what you can possibly do.
And so let me pick up on that, Doug. I think that's exactly right. What, because that's part of the how question. So these are recommendations to city council. And what we want to do is not just say, hey, you guys should be doing this stuff, you know?
But
We
here's a
want-
way of doing it.
Here's a way of doing it. And right now we've got, although not really suggested directly, I think that there's a couple of different ways to how. One is through the city website, one is through a possible bi-yearly report.
And aiming for as cheap a way of doing it as possible, which the city would love to hear, the council. So, yeah, so
What we
that,
utilize is what I used to do in Kansas City. We had a water and electric utility,
Mhm.
and I'd put a flyer out every year about stormwater.
Yeah.
So, you know, they had, their utility had it open for other important events that they would allow people to. You'd have to print off a little flyer that went in, and then they would just insert it. Yeah,
I
So,
used to do that.
I agree with you to look at what the city currently
What's
has,
existing.
what exists, and see if it can be piggybacked.
Yep.
Brian,
Or if people even want to do that.
the stormwater thing,
Is that
Is
going
it-
on by county? or
is it pretty, is it pretty expensive to produce that and send it out?
That may be legislated too, though.
Or is it a tolerable thing?
The annual stormwater report,
Yeah.
I suppose so,
A lot of staff time goes into that.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know?
From a mailing standpoint, I can find out. I've asked Tammy how much it costs to do an insert into the billing.
I mean, that's just a thought, you don't need
Yeah.
to come up to with
It
a
all
cost
depends
as
on the
far
weight
as
of the
I'm
envelope and
concerned,
all this and
but
that, but
something to think about. Or if you could include it, your electrical thing and your natural gas thing, if you could include that in the mailing with the stormwater thing. And say, here's, we don't tell them, hey, this is all you're gonna get. But this is what we've come up with, and we're trying to help you keep abreast of things.
And so another way to look at this is that we do have, the city does have a director of public utilities, is that title?
Public Works.
Public Works Director. Got it backwards. Dyslexic here. a little bit.
Just took over,
Public
right?
Works Director.
Starts today.
Yeah.
Starting today.
let's all rush up there and introduce.
Here's what we want you to do.
But the point is that he's going to be essentially responsible for the stormwater report. And that might be something that we could include in our recommendations, is to have the Director of Public Utilities look at in finding some way to include electrical information.
Well, they're,
Some periodic report.
yeah, I'm thinking, you know, they're a listing of the programs that are available for people to tap into. You know, you can do it with the annual stormwater report. In the summer, we do an annual water confidence report. Probably put something like that in the back of that report. You know, have to think about some other creative ways where we might be able to place some of that information, but you know,
And
I don't know how many people actually read.
read it on the- yes,
But sometimes you never know.
it's another
That one-
means to an end, and that's all you can do.
Well,
Find somebody
and that's
different
on, those two
Yeah.
are also online too. If you get your, water billing on, by email,
Mhm.
then those reports are, You get those online.
I would also add to include the programs that Atmos adds, because they have rebates too.
Yeah.
So that way you cover
Yeah,
both.
I think you
both
want something
meters.
that's gonna be comprehensive,
That's
yeah,
correct.
and not just the Black
Yeah.
Hills side, but any program
Any
that.
program, right.
You could consider it as the intermediate step or the step below that, which is quarterly or semi-annually or annually. You could also try to brand some information source. Call it, I don't know, make it market savvy. I'm not a market savvy guy, but something like your electric info corner or your energy info corner or utility info corner
Yeah.
or utility savings info corner or something. And then it goes out intermittently and it has something pithy that helps you either save money in one of those sectors, but it's a brand that people get used to looking for on Facebook or in the newspaper or whatever.
How to save money during the summertime on with
Yeah.
water,
Yeah.
electricity, river. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
Can I make a recommendation here after listening to all of that we've done?
All those minutia.
With the first goal, we could leave it somewhat similar, but then maybe as a second goal, we could say, methods available to communicate with residents and add all of these.
Sure.
That way, it gets the council thinking about different ways that we might be able to communicate and what they might be interested in, and maybe what they don't
And
Yeah.
want to pursue.
I don't mind being direct, you know, it probably would be perhaps beneficial to be direct and say, you know, recommendations to council for action, or whatever, under each idea.
And so many of these are inexpensive.
Well, that's what we need to look
And
at.
that I think will help too, because it just emphasizes that a lot of good can be accomplished for very little. And that, of course, is one of the things that council is always wanting.
You have to take a look at what, you know, what do you have on hand? How can we utilize that without having to spend? I worked with nonprofit. We did programs with no money.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Tell me how, I want to keep 4 Mile Club open.
Did you figure out your easement access?
Have you considered a GoFundMe page?
Yeah, I was thinking that, but I wasn't actually gonna say that out
Questions
loud.
at one time.
Yeah,
You know, and that also gives, if they need it, the city an out when people are dissatisfied with what the city has tried to do. Say, look, here's where we put this every once a year, twice a year. If you don't, we.
well, or if you want input on it, you know, you should be always happy to take input.
Sure.
Your citizenry.
Sure.
okay,
Okay, all right.
Okay,
Good job, Kurt.
yeah, that's because we've all read number 2.
I
Know that
know.
that's difficult.
Yeah.
so that's the question, or my comment on that one is, I think that one is happening. Is there something that we can recommend to council specifically that they are not doing now, that they need to do, or maybe just words of encouragement, we encourage council to continue or whatever, or
Yeah.
something, you know.
Yeah, I agree. That's
Yeah,
good.
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
Same with 3.
Yeah,
Yeah,
give him a pat on, give Ryan a pat on the back for his communication to the PUC.
so
We've talked about 4 and we haven't done anything yet. Well, I think that's a good idea.
which we,
Well, we were talking about maybe talking to Victor or
you mean the council or you mean the community?
probably the committee at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
And I've just thrown out these things because I know that they've been issues that topics that we've talked about, so I tried to be as comprehensive in
and I,
including as many things as I could remember.
sure, and I like this because the, you know, the question, one of the questions the council has to struggle with is should we be involved in, you know, everything that happens in the PUC with Black Hills, with Atmos, you know, with buses.
Yeah.
It's another PUC.
Cabs.
And we're not, that's not our,
No.
our direction or charge. And so to say that, you know, that it's our belief as a committee, which I believe it is, that the city should be involved with the PUC on, issues that impact electric rates. You know, and because having a focus, I think, is good, rather than just make it a global thing, whatever the
Yeah.
PUC does, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Strength in numbers
Strength in numbers, there are.
and squeaky wheels.
So number 4, work with local communities who are serviced by Black Hills at PUC proceedings. And that's a strength in numbers comment, I guess, but is there something specific that we're, you know, there's not really an association of cities or anything like that. There are different cities in the Black Hills service territory. What would this look like?
Well, and once again, is there anything that, where the communities warrants the outline? Is there something already existing where they come together? I mean, I know
I don't think.
Chamber of Commerce in Florence and Penrose and KNC tried to get together and that blew up. So yeah.
Try to get the city and the county together.
Yeah.
We will,
Seriously.
there are just a few minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, another,
Right, the two cities and the county meet quarterly, and that's today's.
But so really my question, or how I would answer the question is there some thing the city could do to reach out to other cities or service areas, other municipalities in the Black Hills service area to create such coordination or information sharing?
I think very least should, from an information sharing point of view, if nothing else.
That we, being council,
Well, I think it can be either way. Council could have the committee do that, or committee could recommend to council, but I don't know.
Pueblo has an energy committee.
they do.
Yeah.
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 They do. But what would be the action? Other than should, I mean, you know, what would be the action?
I think at the least it would just be conversations with local government and other communities, whether it's with a town or city administrator, manager, or like whatever.
To brainstorm, just like we do here.
Yep.
What are you guys doing, if anything, to try to keep the cost in your community down?
yeah, I think if nothing, you know, the first couple of contacts is just basically letting them know what the heck we're doing and why. And say, have you even thought about this? And they may say, no, that's a hell of a good idea, you know, and go from there, or else, that we've got too many, you know, we're a lot smaller and we've got too much on our plate right now. But thank you for letting us know, you know, what's the worst thing that can happen? So I think that's sure as heck is a good idea to try, you know, whether we divide and conquer. In other words, you sign up for such and such, is this town, or I do this town, or we do this town, whatever, you know, I think it's wise to, and maybe even take their lead as how they want to hear it from. Do they want, you know, we're on the committee, but would they hear it better as a member of council who happens to be on it? I'm just throwing things out.
Yeah, and so my mind's running along the same lines. We're talking about creating a network.
Yeah.
And so how would you create a network? And that's kind of where I'm headed with this, you know, because there's different levels here. You know, we're not talking about creating, I don't think, a political movement where we try to get citizens of other communities involved in some citizens action group. What we're talking about, I think, is having some means for cities or municipalities to share information about rates that can impact their citizens, like, positively, hopefully positive. You know, what are the things that such a network could do to achieve that? And really, so the question is, how do you start such a network? And what's the appropriate level of communication? You know, is it us reaching out to a city manager somewhere or a mayor? Cities have strong mayors.
I would say that we probably ask council for permission for us to do that.
Okay,
And then, you know, we get a list of where we go, we formulate the talking points and divide and conquer as far as calling them and seeing.
so the first is how to do it, okay? Before we say exactly what's gonna happen. The first is how to do it. And so one way to answer the how question is to say the city authorized this committee to write a committee letter, perhaps. Maybe something, you know, that's the.
I think it needs to be a
That's where it kinda gets
higher
sticky.
level, you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those, as you on the committee, but being also mayor pro tem. To me, that, and you being able to put that at the bottom of the layout,
Right.
I think has more impact. But I also think frankly, a phone call to begin with, because that way you obtain, there's nothing better than personal contact. And if that means just calling the clerk of that town and saying, who would be the best person to contact within council? Or is there somebody else we should be talking to? And then you formulate a conversation and then send the letter to be more official.
Okay, so our recommendation to council would be for the committee, divvy it up amongst us. Contact city clerks in the Black Hills service area and say, hey, we're interested in talking about rates with you. And do you have, what's going on in your city? Got something that, where people are already doing that? Is that of interest to your city? Who in your city would be part? Yeah, to further the conversation.
Mhm.
That would be the recommendation.
That's my right, yeah.
Yes, as long as they are somebody not just in the city, but somebody that is either council, mayor pro tem, city administrator, somebody.
Yeah.
That has the,
Well, I don't know that I would necessarily limit it, Doug, because if we're calling the city clerk and we're saying, hey, who in your city is interested in or working on, electric rates or gas rates or whatever. It would be good to have, for us to have that information that we could then parse it and dice it up and feed it back to council as a recommendation about how to proceed in that case.
I see that as after the initial contact.
Well,
Say you call from the city of Florence. Do you folks, or our energy committee is exploring the possibility of the communities getting together to discuss Black Hills rates? Are you interested?
well, it's more than are you interested, but who in your town is the
That's
appropriate
true.
person to talk to?
Right.
And because, so I look at this as an information gathering
Yes.
exercise, and that's why I don't mind the question is, do you have a non-governmental group that's looking at this issue and gather that information?
Just like the energy committee in Pueblo, I'm sure that there's political people, but also just interested, is it strictly government or is it interested in like yourself? And
It's interested parties.
Yeah.
It's,
How large is it, Steve?
I haven't attended the meeting. I can't tell
Okay.
you. I can't tell you.
But anyway, I think we're on the right track. And
Yeah.
I think I'm approaching it. And I mean, it may be one of those to where they want to, we may end up going someplace for an hour's meeting with 2 or 3 of them or something, and whether it's all of us or 1 or 2 of us or whatever, just to inform them, this is what we've done up to this point. And we brought our talking person who has it all written down for us, and, but anyway, I'm just saying, I think that's wise for us to maybe approach it. You know, they may say, no, that's really, we're not, it's fine, cross that one particular one off the list and go on to somebody else.
There's a list of, and I don't know whether Black Hills would be provided, could provide it, of communities that have franchise agreements with Black Hills.
I know
That-
about that.
Yeah, I'm
I
sure
bet
that's
that's-
something we can get easily, but yeah, and if not, John's really not trying.
I think I provided that in the past.
Yeah, I think.
You probably have.
We don't have
It's
very
about
much.
20 or so.
No, it's okay.
20 or so, and include, it does not include things like the half of Pueblo West that Black Hill serves, that,
Sure.
you know, so I mean,
Mhm.
it's not a comprehensive, doesn't cap people in counties, I'm not
Sure.
Oh, yeah,
covering.
okay. Does Pueblo West have a franchise, or is it because they're,
Their metro district.
Metro district, so it's,
Yeah, and it's really just, it's kind of incorporated cities that end up with franchise.
that's what I thought, okay.
And
But we serve a number of, with statutory, not statutory towns, but the census designated places, I guess is what the term is, the correct term is, so we serve a number of them.
It's like XL serves Bonanza that has like 3 permanent residents there. The Secretary of State won't unincorporate it. That's mainly because they end up with all the franchise money to the state because nobody's there to accept it. Not that there's any money, but it's the whole idea. So anyway, don't get me on by sidetrack. Sorry.
Okay. So that's something that we could recommend to council.
Yeah, I think that's
Give us
a
a try. Okay, work with other communities to develop state legislation to assist with electrical issues. At some point, I think that when you start talking about interfacing with the legislature, we need to make sure we know what the ground rules are, because there are rules about lobbying that have to be honored. And so that's probably something council could perhaps address, but nonetheless, assuming that maybe we get some guidance there, or
I would think that we would have a little freedom on talking to our legislator, just to let them know what our concerns are. That would be separate than saying, wouldn't that be separate than saying, okay, we want this piece of legislation, or there is a piece of legislation and we want you to, whatever.
there are my answer to that, Kathy, is that there are lines out there.
Mhm.
Okay, and no, I'm saying we should know what the lines.
Make sure we don't step over. Sure.
Where they are, I'm not so
Yeah.
sure myself,
Yeah.
but I do know that there is, having been a member of a company, an employee of a company that had interests that they wanted to pursue with legislature.
Sure.
That there is, there's really there's rules that can't apply. there.
Oh, trust me, I work with the same type of company. Okay,
Could one thing be just developing some relationships with the local elected officials? I mean, just as a first step of trying to see if.
you're thinking state elected.
Yeah, just having that communication open with some of your elected officials and.
So I think the answer is for us as a committee of the city to contact legislators about legislation, that we need to parse out the lobbying rules first. Before we make that recognition, we need to know for sure where the lines are there, because I know there are lines out there. And when we talk, so really, perhaps our recommendation to the city is, number one, find out where the lobbying lines are, whether we do it for lobbying, including city council members. I mean, that would be great. I would not mind knowing that myself.
Yeah,
What I can, or what the,
Yays and
where the
nays.
where the lines are, so that I can get accordingly. But on the other hand, as a citizen of the state, all citizens can talk to their legislators about their concerns. The issues start coming up when it's a citywide concern.
Good point.
You know, something
Yep.
like that.
Well, as a first step, when you go to your meeting today, ask the commissioners if they're going, I think that's who sponsored it, the legislative hour, where they invite our representatives.
oh, yeah, well,
And to, you know, was it the chamber?
the chamber didn't play well.
Know what they're doing, what their thoughts are on what.
Your
what-
priorities.
They're reinvigorating the committee with the chamber, the government affairs
Yeah.
committee, Bob Stovall is heading that up.
Oh,
I know that much, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
In the chamber, Bob, and the chamber is heading that up,
This is under the chamber.
and the road board line.
now, okay, we're talking about it, I'm digressing just to get a quick, you said that trying to put together Florence, Penrose, and, but so what's the alliance then?
Well, an aspiration.
Okay, so in other words, it's
Yeah.
still pie in the
Yeah.
sky, okay,
One, the gal that is, I think she's still head of Florence Chamber, they just wanted to get together and set a calendar, if nothing else, so that you don't have 6 things going on the same
Same day,
weekend,
exactly.
you know, and it dilutes everybody's impact for
Right.
events. But I don't know what happened, I haven't gotten that gossip yet, but something blew up, you know, and to me, that's just silly. As a person who has lived here my whole life, and there used to be such rivalry and hate almost among the communities, we can't do that anymore, we just can't. We're too intermingled. I mean, you don't know where Florence ends and Canyon City begins sometimes, and we just can't do that. So I think it's silly, but, you know, I'm not gonna be the
Okay.
referee.
So on the specific suggestion of getting with the Chamber Alliance and finding out what they're doing or not doing with legislative powers. If Bob Stovall was heading that up.
I've communicated with him, but I don't know, you know, where it is.
Okay. Why don't I take that on as an action item? To contact Bob Stovall.
Is Penrose a town? What is it? It's nothing.
It's
unincorporated.
Unincorporated.
Don't say that around
And
some people.
I'll ask Bob, what do they, where are they in, hosting the legislative hour again? See what their schedule is, and ask the additional question. Is there a way for this committee, which we have to ask permission to do, or city council to present on electrical rate issues? That would be I think, what to find out. Is that, sound all right, Dee? I mean, but see how open, the question would be, how open is the Chamber Alliance to a particular group coming in and using up, because this is the legislative hour is a chance for citizens to come in and ask questions of their legislators directly, in addition to hearing what the heck is going on in Denver, from each legislator's point of view. But there's a chance to ask questions, and so would the Chamber Alliance be open to providing several questions essentially, or a block of time for a presentation or something like that?
And it's better to get in here early, when the session's
gonna-
early, because when it gets down to, you know, last minute legislation, and especially during election, forget it.
Well,
They're here for 15 minutes and on the slider or whatever.
did you see the big article
Not a
in
good,
the Daily Record this morning? There was a big article on Stephanie Luck and what she hopes to accomplish this year. You know, and so it's one of those, you're hitting the ground running.
Yeah.
So,
That's good.
but who's our other, it's terrible to say.
Well,
I
The
can't-
senator, I don't know.
is
Mark.
Is Nick
It's Mark.
Henriksen part Easter?
He's not here. I mean, he doesn't.
He's not
But I
there.
don't
Mark's last
Well,
name.
I don't know.
Well, what's his-
Nobody knows, that's kind of,
Our
That's scary.
treasurer is Mark.
Are we District 60?
did we not elect him?
We did.
Oh, I know.
Who is he?
Well, ever since redistricting, I think.
So
they
I
all
was gonna
come
say, you used to have
together.
Senator Heisey, right?
Yeah.
For election this.
And now,
Steve, wasn't it Steve Heisey?
is it?
no, Dennis Heisey.
Dennis
Yeah.
Heisey.
It's not Dennis, he
No.
did, he lost.
He lost.
Yeah. And I looked, actually, I was looking on the state's website and they haven't updated it yet. Their General Assembly website. I was like, seriously? You guys should have this updated.
That's terrible. I feel better, but it's terrible. Oh,
I know what his name is.
You know, I just.
Well, we won't bring up any history here.
I should send an email to Sarah Blackstone from Action 22, she should know.
Yeah.
Blackstone.
Blackhurst.
Thank you. Black
There.
Hills, what is it?
No, she's talking about the Action 22 Executive Director.
I was a charter member, but I'm not a current.
So where we at? Are we on number 5?
So it is Mark Baisley.
Huh,
That's the name of our senator.
That's terrible, but I didn't even
My
read it.
name's right in the back, but that's-
Okay,
I think it's.
Why didn't you send him an email asking to come down and introduce himself?
Yeah,
Where does he live?
maybe in 6 months.
yeah.
Yeah, they're in session now.
Well,
We actually met with the police chief last week or the week before. That's good.
Yeah, that's gonna be hard. That's gonna be really, okay. So our recommendation, so all of these things that we might want to look at is really dependent on, in number 5, is really dependent on the answer about where the lines are for lobbyists. So I think that
With A, I don't think it is. A
Oh,
should be a
not that.
separate.
that should go up into number
Community-
1.
community solar.
Wait a minute.
The overall bullet is work with the legislature.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's what we need to answer first, is how and under what circumstances. And we as a committee or as individuals on the committee, as representatives of the committee or city council, interface with the legislature. What are the rules?
I would think we could get that pretty clearly and quickly from our city attorney.
I was just gonna say, I think Corey could probably.
Sure. You want to ask Corey, or would you like me to? Because I can. Sure, well, okay, that works.
What can we and can't we do? Tell Kathy to keep your mouth shut.
So,
Now, would that be a topic for next time to cover all our bases, that have Cory come and give us a short course?
No, he could he could probably,
It might be just some.
I think he could just email us that.
That's fine.
Whatever, could he?
the Corey's client is city council.
Yeah,
Okay, and so this would be city council asking Corey
Mhm.
about lobbyist 101 issues.
Yeah,
And because of that, that may involve privileged communications.
so we need to sign another NDA.
No, you're
No,
not.
It may,
Okay.
it may not.
All right.
Okay, but the point is, the response from Corey will help direct
Right,
what level of information you
Sure.
get.
sure.
Whatever.
And that's just one of the objectives. The first objective under that goal is to find that
Yes.
information out.
Yeah.
So,
Perfect, exactly.
I I have a couple of comments on A and B.
Mhm.
Want to bring those up. On A, do we want to include or somehow have the wording include community scale solar or just? Because community solar, I think is the phrase that's used for what the city's already participating in a very small way. Is that right?
So-
Ryan?
I'm sorry.
Yes, we do participate in this.
Yes.
Thanks, Ryan.
But I would phrase the question completely differently than whether this committee should investigate community solar. What I think this committee, the more appropriate role for this committee is to investigate the benefits and problems with community solar. Because there can be bigger problems than just, is it a good thing or not for us to do? That you can create by going community solar. So that,
Is your comment related to what the city's already doing or
No.
something different? I'm not following.
so the question is, do we investigate the potential of community solar? That's assuming that the city wants community solar. Before that decision is made, the more appropriate role for this committee is to look at the benefits and problems with
I
community
still
solar.
am not clear. When you're saying community solar, what are you thinking? I'm not clear, because we already are subscribing
We
to
do.
solar projects. So
We do.
are you talking about something?
Let me phrase it. Are we talking about individual Black Hills customers participating and being part of it, getting some of their electricity from a community solar? Is that what you're thinking,
No,
Emily?
I'm not. What I'm thinking about is community scale, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna first understand what Don's referring to. That if you. Are you saying the
So-
city should get out of what they're doing?
No,
That's
that's
what I'm
nothing like that,
following.
no. So actually that's helpful. And investigate the potential of community scale solar. But nonetheless, there's still a question. That I think that needs to be answered, what are the benefits and drawbacks of community scale solar?
I keep coming back to the dollar sign, is it gonna cost us more? Environmentally, I agree wholeheartedly with solar, but if it's gonna put more of a burden on our individual Black Hills customers, then I think we're defeating our purpose.
Okay,
Now, let me just ask here, because when I sent this over to you, it wasn't underneath state legislature.
it was,
I had that as a separate goal.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that needs to
Because,
be, in-
because what I'm looking at is the potential of a community scale solar. That's not dependent on new legislation at
So
the state
this
level, because
are all these numbers?
Then what's
Six,
the,
7, 8,
yeah, basically,
so all of them?
oh,
yeah.
So we're not
DNA?
5A, 5B.
All of these
Sorry,
Oh, so that's supposed,
that was,
are their own goals.
oh, okay, so those,
that was not here.
Okay.
okay, so 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, that feels better.
Okay.
yeah, that's,
Plus, maybe when we're looking at investigating, John, they've got the renewable program before the PUC, and we do know that there has been a solar company that has looked into here, but are you looking at are we looking at something different, or do we want to just try and encourage? I'm
I
confused.
brought this up because we had a big discussion last meeting about the community solar, and I really don't know a lot of information about it, but I thought it's at least an option to look at, and like John was saying, to identify what the pros and cons are of that, and whether it might work or not work, and
So maybe to clarify a little bit, the community solar, this is a prescriptive program in our res plan. So we're going to issue RFPs for so many megawatts of community-based, larger community solar gardens over the course of the next 3 years. And kind of what I heard in our last conversation is, how does this
committee or how does this community really drive or derive benefit from that? And I think you'll have a really good example. If I think they make the RFPs public, so one just recently closed. And you'll get to see how those, you can see how those are put together. But it's really about, my mind, it's how the city can leverage those people that are bidding to help them win the bid and help you, get things you want as a result of that. So if that makes any sense, like, I'll just use an example. Say you tell a solar developer, hey, we have city land, we will lease it to you for nothing or for $1 a year, whatever it is. In exchange, we would like for you to make X amount of dollars. We want to guarantee 10% savings to customers, whoever signs up. I don't know what that looks like, but
Sure.
those are examples of negotiations that you can work through with developers to maybe try and cite because of the potential for property tax and place and serve the customers that are in your area. Just an example. So I think that's what the last conversation was that I recall.
Okay.
Yeah, now that thanks, John.
Okay. So did you get anything out of that, Emily, or you still got questions?
No, that's fine. I just wanted to understand what Kirk meant in his writing of community solar, and then what John was using that same phrase. I just wasn't sure
Okay.
what they were envisioning, because there's a lot of, you can have a lot of different things in your mind. You can think of community scale, or the subscription programs, or rooftop solar, or other kinds of microgrid things. So I just think we, need to.
Well, and one of the questions too, Emily, that can be asked in that discussion is, should the community choose solar as an energy source? For instance, but because we
That's
heard,
such a broad question.
well, we had a presentation. We had a presentation on that, the community, there's our communities that have made that choice. And so asking that question, is that appropriate? Is that something the city is interested in doing? It's not beyond the scope of this.
As long as you clarify, are you talking individual rooftop or
Well, that-
microgrid
so-
stuff or a community scale generation?
So what the presentation we had was community scale generation. Right?
I'm just asking.
Well, I'm asking you, was that not the presentation that we had on a community scale generation?
No, what I'm saying or doing to irritate you, Jonathan.
I'm not irritated.
I'm not intending to.
We're having a discussion.
Right, so I would just say that whatever we put in here, we should spell out what some of those options are. Then look at it.
Sure. So we got community scale, rooftop, and subscription. Are those the three?
Yeah, I think there's some other things that are communities are doing, and I can't remember the exact word for it, but where they're finding ways to put solar on commercial buildings or industrial buildings, and somehow that becomes part of it. So there's just a lot of different ways to look at that.
Well, I could definitely include those three here. And if we have
And
more,
then
we
we
can
said
always
this is
include.
kind of a high level.
Yeah.
planning document.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that-
And the good thing about goals and objectives, they're adjustable.
They're written in pencil.
Not today.
Okay. So. Number 7. Investigate potential programming to assist low income customers. Is that part of number 1?
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the more I looked at it, you'll have to excuse, this was the first. memorandum that I had with it. and I was-
It's a great basis for discussion.
Yeah,
Thank you. Okay.
you don't get out of this, Whatever you put down is great.
Eventually.
Not today.
Okay, number 8, evaluate rate relief options from PUC rate study to see if options could help with rate relief. And we don't need permission to do that.
No,
That's something we can, if we want, as a committee, can take on.
and what I'll do here is I'll just go ahead and include a real short synopsis of what the recommendations were. So that we see what they are. I just didn't
That's good.
get around to getting that done.
Okay, gotcha.
So that way we at least know what they are and some of them probably are not
So, so
gonna be any good.
I see the audience for this document is our administrator and city council.
Uh-huh.
Okay, in that light, maybe it would be good to say, here are the things that we do want to take on as a committee. Here's what we're looking at, here, any current actions we're taking or anything like that, or, you know, document that, hey, the committee would like to evaluate that study. And, you know, make further recommendations. So that would be good, it would be kind of good to, if we can work that in here somehow, it might be kind of difficult, but.
Well, if we just list what the suggestions were, and then just you could maybe put in parentheses that this is something of interest, you know, just.
Well, and maybe the way we do that is put our priorities, the committee's priorities on the list.
Yeah,
And say, you know, just 1, 2, 3, you know, 1, 2, 3 priorities. We view this as a priority 1, view this as a priority 2.
and I can get all of this back for the next meeting too, so we could look
Okay.
at it again and refine it some more if we want.
Okay, all legislative efforts for community choice energy. Seems like something that the council asked us to do.
Yeah.
And so it'd be good to feed that information back to them, so we think that that's part of our scope.
I have heard that there are definite plans to introduce legislation this session. But I don't have any more detail, but
Okay.
I'll follow up on that.
Okay. Then city discussion with Black Hills, determine new franchise agreement. Or a different type of agreement. That's really, that's.
Now, this is not a short, this
Yeah.
might not necessarily be a short-term goal, but it's something that, depending on what path the city goes on, this is definitely something that would, if we maintain our service with Black Hills, an issue that's gonna need to be looked at and resolved. One, you know, one way or the other, council's gonna have to make a decision. You know, do we have negotiate an agreement? Or do we renegotiate some type of a ballot issue to go with the franchise agreement? You know, that's,
Sure.
but that's a decision of council.
Yes.
And it's gonna have to be, you know, it very potentially could happen where that decision needs to be made. So I think it's important here to include it because otherwise we would not be really truly reflecting the whole picture.
So to me, this is something that I believe that council is kind of expecting based on our charter, is a recommendation of concerning this. And so if we were to make a recommendation, the question to ask ourselves is, what do we need to do that? What do we need to do that? Is there what, you know, if if we are to come to a conclusion concerning that question, what are the inputs we need to come to a conclusion? And feed that back to city council. Because I don't think we're gonna, some of this stuff, really what we're kind of doing is laying out what we see as the future of this committee, what we intend to accomplish or would like to accomplish. And make sure that we have the city council's understanding and agreement that that's those specific items that, like this list we have here, are what council wants us to pursue. Okay, any other questions or comments on that?
Just a little follow-up on the comment you just made
Uh-huh.
as to what do we hope to accomplish? Does anybody here in their mind have a set goal of what we hope to accomplish. I think we've danced all around it. But not got there.
So,
The clear goal all along has been about cost of electricity, and then this is a goal list that we've just been talking about for this committee.
So do we need to further refine our list? Is that what you're saying, Emily?
No,
No?
so
Okay.
one way to look at this.
Yeah.
This is a goal-setting exercise for this committee with the understanding and agreement from council.
And what it involves is a Black Hills option. There will be more things that we're gonna look at as we proceed through it of what our goals are. These are, and I did this for a reason, to keep everything under a Black Hills option that we discussed at once, instead of coming out and trying to bring different types of alternatives where everybody's going this way and that way. That way, everybody can at least discuss, this is what this is what, you know, we maintain our service with Black Hills. These are some of the things that the committee might recommend, and I'm not saying these are the only things, you know, but it gives us a viewpoint to start with. Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have a update? Community choice energy and the use report, sounds like we've all got it.
What are you hearing on the case up at the PUC as far as your res? Are you guys in negotiations with your
Yep.
Interveners, that's the word.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah, of course. We're
Nothing new.
going through the negotiation right now through settlement hearings. I hear generally that parties are interested in settling that and not going all the way through the process. I
Which I'm
can't
sure you're
speak to
glad about.
specifics. Oh, sure, and I think probably everybody's glad about
Yeah.
it because it costs money for us all to be there.
Yep.
So. Yeah, so generally I hear very positive things.
Good. Hopefully good.
So maybe Emily, you can take that as an action item, this big time.
CCE stuff.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what's going on, yeah.
That's what we're talking about, community choice energy report that was given to the legislature, and we have some information on it.
It was interesting, that article this morning by Stephanie she was saying that, I forget, what, like 160 bills or something like that, and being thrown at them and trying to go through that many bills in such a short period of time. I think she was hoping to, I don't know, I don't think she got into specifics, but as far as trying to find a better process before the bills actually get to the legislation, as far as having some committees of interested bodies and so forth to go through these before they actually get shoved, so that it makes it easier for the legislature to have a clue what the hell they're supposed to be looking at. So it'd be interesting to see. And of course, she was making a point about being in the minority as far as total legislature and stuff, that things were a little frustrating from her perspective, but anyway, it was interesting. So if you get it, you'll have to take a peek at it and see.
You have to be a speed reader.
Oh, heavens, and they don't have, I mean, they have staff, but it's not like in the state level or the national level
Well,
to
they're
be
not
able.
all experts in
I
everything.
know, heavens, no, I mean, geez.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, that.
There used to be a cap on how many bills each
Person could let,
legislature could
I think
introduce.
you're right, yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
that's,
Well, that's-
whatever the cap is, it's probably still way too many, because,
Yeah, well, whether or not they're adhering to it is the question.
yeah, well, yeah, how quickly they're, yeah,
I
how
think there's
quickly they're.
ways around that.
Mm,
Okay,
Don, I, that question, you submitted a document.
Uh-huh.
Did you want to say anything about
well,
that,
that's just,
or whether we need to be spending more?
take a look at it.
I did.
And see what you think. This is, this gets into the lobbying area. Really is what this may get into, or at least acting on it, would get into the lobbying area, but just some thoughts I put together. Based on our experiences here. So I think that it's would be more appropriate to take that up after we find out what we need to about it.
And there might be other things that people think of also to kind of go into that bucket of what are things in state law that are making it so difficult for communities in IOE territories and there are things that can be addressed.
Okay. Next meeting, yeah, something else?
Oh, I was just gonna ask John, how often do they adjust your rate of return? Your,
So that happens in general rate cases, so
Okay.
we haven't filed since 2012. I mean, phase two came in 2016.
okay, because I was just curious, thinking about how high inflation is now. So that means your costs have gone up, and so I was just, so then, anyway, what I'm hoping is that frankly, that you weren't gonna be asking for any amount higher than that anytime soon. And I don't even know what it is right now. Do you know what it is offhand? 9
The
something?
return, it said it in the report, I can't remember authorized
I
return,
don't think it's
8.75 or something like
Really?
that.
What'd you say?
I thought it was in that report, and I thought it was like 8.75 is the
8.5.
authorized rate.
Well, I thought it was 89, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Okay, just, that, I'm done.
I'm sorry, I don't have the exact number,
Don't worry,
Kathy, but
that's
I could get it for you.
Oh,
Mike.
heavens, it's
But
okay.
but that's changed with, just when you take a look at rate cases.
When they do,
When-
yeah,
when
when they
that-
introduce a rate
Okay,
case, correct?
Good.
The last time your rate case kicked in a phase two was, it took effect July 1, 2018.
2016, I think.
2018,
18.
I'll bet you lunch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it might be
Down at the Aspen Leaf.
Yeah,
18 or 22. I
yeah.
don't know. I can't recall.
2018, July 1.
Don't think you're gonna get any takers on that.
That was also in that report, wasn't it? I could swear it was in that report. Somebody have their copy?
Next meeting.
I'm curious.
Copy of which,
Of the detailed rate survey.
I don't know.
I've got it online. Got it in the file.
I'm just curious because I think when they went through the chronology, they talked about that phase two, and I thought it was 2017 that it kicked in. I thought it was
They
2016.
applied for it in 2017, but it kicked in on July 1, 2018.
I see that report. I'm not convinced.
All right, so next.
Offered
meeting,
to
Yes,
bet on
the
lunch.
23rd.
It's on the table.
Do we want to meet the 23rd?
If we can
But you
continue
very well
discussion on this document.
Because I was at the city when it went into effect.
Yeah,
I think that city.
I can have that
I
done
think
easily.
it
I'm betting on
started
it.
there.
Okay, I think, yeah.
But I just can't
I
recall.
think it's important for us
Too many
to
things in my head.
I
to
know,
go
I know.
over that.
Yeah.
And as
I'm way
we've
past that.
got the information in front of us, it'll maybe spur some new ideas to how we could add some
Okay.
different things
We
into it.
may have information back about the lobby
Yeah,
question
yeah.
and about community choice
Sure.
energy legislature.
No, I think this is a really important aspect of what we're doing to try to get together.
Okay. That sounds great.
Perfect.
Plan.
Thank you.
John, may I just make a comment? I was, based on some of the conversation that we had today, I know we talked a little bit about looking at the cost savings opportunities that were identified in the retail rate survey. It's one of the things that was actually kind of on my mind as I read the report that, the preliminary report, Kirk, that you had authored. And so I'm going to share with this committee some potential edits because there are a couple things that, we
I would-
actually have done.
I would wait a little bit on that because that's not gonna be exactly the same document.
Okay,
I'm just telling you ahead of time.
Sure.
Because some of the things might not even be in it. 'cause
Okay.
When I write something, I write it and then I
Mhm.
think about it and let it set for a little while.
Mhm.
And then I might go into it a
Sure.
little bit different direction. I'm just telling you.
well,
that so
and I
that
just
you-
thought it might be helpful to you because as an example, Renewable Advantage was in direct response to trying to add renewables to lower cost. We do have a time of use right now that's available as recommended in that as one option. So there are some things that have been introduced
Okay.
that now exist or were at least attempted.
If you go on the time of use, do you have to stay on it for a period of time?
They say a year.
Okay.
So I think the basic answer is that if Black Hills has some comments.
I think
or
it's good to get them.
Not the year.
And get him to John.
Yeah,
John
I'd send
can-
them through John and
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah, and they can disseminate it to us. Thanks, John.
Mhm.
Did you find it?
Rates went into effect on July 1, 2018 for 17AL-0477E Black Hills Phase 2.
John, you should
Perfect.
know better.
When I'm willing to bet lunch on it, it's another level.
It's a big thing.
Yeah.
It's okay. I just remember,
No, that's
we've got a lot of stuff up there. Too much, too much.
Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you. We've all been trying to do here, because we are working to try and make it better for our residents. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Are we gonna have a 23rd meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Put it on your calendars.
That's your.
Well, that's- Sure.
Or not just for us.